Warm welcome to each and every one of you, and I thank you for coming and being a part of a very momentous and special day for us, for Cowes First Nation. This is the first time a special assembly has been called under the Constitution by our membership. And this is the first time we're utilizing our Constitution so that members have the voices that we deserve. And to ensure that we give the proper respect to the process and the Constitution, what we have done is formalize this process and to have it facilitated by somebody that has been part of the First Nations judicial process. And at this time, I would like to give a warm welcome to our home community, the community where we all come from here. And as I always say, where for generations our ancestors have lived and died on these lands and have done everything they could for us to be here today. This is the home, Judge Morin, of our ceremonies, our history, our good times, our bad times, but it's a time of hope, of renewal, and these are the people that hold it down for us in terms of language revitalization, culture revitalization, and I'm so proud to ask you to come and to facilitate our process today because these are our homelands and we're very, very proud of them. So people of Cowes, please give a warm welcome to Judge Morin.
Johnson do Timitig. The nay one of she second stamrag me yak, I am in. The nay hawayak, the big square, the Kushiga. The Apachita, Umaga, Kawiamitua. First of all, I am honored to be here to try and help out in this particular process. I have not. People have said what my association with the chief is. I met her yesterday for the first time when I was at the meeting. That was the first time her and I spoke in terms of situation. So I was asked to facilitate, and I think just to give you some idea where I come from in relation to that, I was a lawyer from 1987, became a judge in 2001, and did Decree Court, developed Decree Court in Northern Saskatchewan where we did court in Cree, our language. We had a prosecutor who spoke Cree, all my clerks spoke Cree, and of course, and sadly, many of the people that appeared before court spoke Cree. I have good working knowledge in terms of what hurts a community. I grew up in a small community. My dad, my uncles, aunts all went to residential school. And so those are things that I have learned about. But more importantly, I think I learned to listen. I learned to listen in terms of what is going on. And I think from that, also we have a bit of a protocol in doing that. We do things from respect. We do things from what we say, helping each other. With the skilled, we share the land. We are all related. We love one another. So in looking at those factors, today we have a few things I think that need to be discussed, and you have been involved in a long process. It started out in 1907, and perhaps even before then, people planning to do that to you, how to take your land away. But in that process, in the last 36 years, you've been involved in trying to get that claim in, get it understood, get it underway, you are now getting so close to certain things that many feel, why do we have to wait any longer? Well, I think what's important is that everybody needs to operate from a basis of understanding what is going on. This is only part of the process. People have asked certain things which initiated this particular meeting. And I think today, what we want to do, we will hear the remarks from your chief. She is your chief. And then we will listen also we will take some questions then, but I want to emphasize this. The chief will be available after we finish all the presentations. She will be available to answer many of the questions people will still have that arise from those presentations. Hopefully, those presentations allow you to be able to think in terms of what is wrong with that process or what is good about that process, why is this happening. Those type of questions will come out. Nobody's shying away from the questions or answers, but it is a process. So I think if we allow the presentations to take place, you will have some questions to the presenters. They will answer those. You will then also have questions with respect to the chief in relation to that. And I think in those particular processes, we will learn certain things. But let us do it with respect. There's nothing wrong with a good, healthy debate. Believe me, in my 38 years, I have listened to many of those, made some myself. But we do it with respect. And so let us try and do that. When I say a good, healthy debate, people will raise their voices. There's nothing wrong with that. But I will get up occasionally, and hopefully that we try and calm things down if they get there. If they don't, fine. But that's part of my role. I've done that for 20 years. I've been sworn at. I've had different things occur when I'm doing in court. I always remember it's not me. It's a representation of who I might be in relation to that. So with that, let's have the greater opening remarks from Chief.
Thank you, Judge Morin. So this is day 2. We had a very lively conversation yesterday in Regina, and very appreciative of everybody being able to speak their minds. And you know, I wanted to clarify before we continued on, so that perhaps some questions can be answered prior to, so that we can get through exactly why we're here today. And I don't think I did that great of a job last night, and I acknowledge that. And when I was growing up, as well as being a young adult, and wanted to come to, at that time before we had a constitution, we had band membership meetings, and band meetings as they were. And a lot of the time, they were shut down. They were shut down, people got mad, and the chief shut them down immediately. And people didn't get to speak. And so now that we have a constitution, we really wanted to look at how that looks so that we don't get shut down, so that everybody gets a chance to speak. And that proceedings happen where that people get to speak. And that is a key reason why Judge Morin is here today. It's not to tell us how to act or whatever the case is. It's to try to facilitate a meeting where it doesn't get to that place that it used to in the past, and that we could end the meeting in good relations and go home and feel that we've been heard. Secondly, there's been the question, and I'll address it immediately. And you will hear more specifically, but I wanted to start off so that people can hear it immediately, is why aren't the 1907 lawyers here, Al and Dan? Al and Dan know that we have embarked on the process. I had Stephanie and I as in-house counsel, as well as the council. Al and Dan have been part of this process. We've had Zoom calls. Stephanie has had independent calls with Al and Dan. They have been part of this process because they understand that this is a process that must occur in this day and age. So, as part of the process here in 2026, it is essential for us as a First Nation, when we are talking about potentially the amount of money that we are talking about, that there are items that we as a First Nation are required to get, and those are independent opinions. Now, those independent opinions are one and done. There is no backroom scheme. There is no lawyers that are ready to take over, swoop in and take over on the 1907. If you have heard that, that is misinformation. First of all, I don't have that ability. And if it's being put on my shoulders that the chief wants to do this, that, and the other thing, I don't have that ability. I respect all of the hard work, and in every place that I have gone to speak, I speak about past leadership and the fact that when our term came on, we only finished a process of negotiation, and that Al and Dan, as the lawyers, did an excellent job of negotiating. I have stood by that statement the entire time that I have been chief. There is no expectation that they will not be on this file. But we as chief and council have an obligation, a legal obligation, a fiduciary obligation, and this was told to me from Canada, that we had to receive in this day and age of 2026, where we expect that our very high value claim is going to be completed. Creator willing, and I said last night, Mark Carney willing, that we will have had to demonstrate to our membership that we sought independent legal opinion in order to go through this process. When we start talking about the trust, the actual Causes Trust, Dan and Al will be leading that process. That is their job. That's what they will be doing. But it is our fiduciary obligation and our responsibility to our future people, as well as to our ancestors, and as well in 2026 here now, for those First Nations, because there's been a lot, and we've seen it, and I've been asked by many, many band members as well, what we are doing to ensure fair and reasonable in terms of understanding the trust as well as the fees. This isn't coming from me. And it's actually me being asked by the membership that I actually went to Canada because I didn't understand exactly what that obligation was. When all of those stories about Ron Maurice, I'll say it, all the stories about Ron Maurice started hitting the air and those types of things. And then that's when the question started coming to me, well, Chief, what's happening? How much are we paying? And that's when I said, well, what is our obligation? And that's when I went to go seek this advice. As we sought independent opinion, Al and Dan, once again, they actually submitted to Stephanie, and Stephanie has been that part of that process, even away from council, because she is in-house legal, to work with Al and Dan. And they have been working on what they have submitted as their, how they have worked on this claim. I think that they've submitted over 170 pages of documents themselves. And that process that Al and Dan have been a part of actually went to the law firms where the second legal opinion or the independent legal opinion went. Nothing has been done behind their back. That's not how we do things. It is our fiduciary obligation today to talk about process, to talk about, and this will protect all of us. This will protect your chief and council, the people that are representing you, but it will also protect you as membership, because you're alive in this day and age when we expect the 1907 to come to a close. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you choose to look at it, there is emerging case law. And now us First Nations, we have to look at that. There's emerging case law where if we don't go through these processes, that we as chief and council, we can be held liable, and they could come after us personally, like future members, if we don't do this job. The people today are not representing Cowsas. They have been asked to do one specific job, and last night we called it one and done. They are not here waiting in the wings, because that would take their ability to say it's an independent opinion away from them. But it is them coming to inform our membership what exactly, and educate, just like we've had to get educated. And every single duly called, and when I talk with membership council, and council had 3 days, just not even a month ago, of education, and as well on the third day, there was 5 banking institutions that came to vie for our business, that came through a RFP process. So there has been work that has been done. It's all been above board. Al and Dan have been part of this process, but there are certain aspects, because they will be receiving financial compensation, that is why it is considered a conflict for them to give an independent legal advice. It is also a conflict for them to recommend who we should get legal advice from. They have to stay completely at arm's length away from them. As we move through this process, Al and Dan will be leading when we start talking about trust. If you tell us, after hearing today's presentation, that you just want chief and council to work with Al and Dan by ourselves and to come up with the trust, we'll do that. But if you say what we want to do is have community meetings and community engagement so that we can look and make this a Cowsas trust where it has our priorities in it, then we'll listen to that too. We'll bring that to the council table. This was not meant to do anything except that. And there has been, when money's being spoken about, when this is so close and emotional to our hearts, that's where we lose our kinship. I don't expect everybody to like me. It's just the way it is. Or to agree with me. That's okay. But we still love each other. And after I am done being chief, I'm still going to be your niece, your cousin, your friend. And I want to be able to do that afterwards. I do not have any ill intent here. And I'm sorry, I'm emotional. But this is very emotional to me because when I went to that day school when I was 10 years old, I was very, very harmed, just like many of us here. And I'm a little bit triggered right now. Because I love us. I love our lands, and I'm so excited for the future that's going to be coming for us after we're long gone. And I just want to be part of a process where we can all be involved, where we all have that opportunity, where it's not like how it was before, where things were closed down, things were done behind closed doors. People were not known about knowing what's going on. There are certain things that we as council cannot share because of client solicitor privilege, such as right now, there has been an independent advice given from another law firm that already presented to the chief and council that is protected by client solicitor privilege that we cannot speak about to membership. It has to sit at our table, and now we hold the responsibility for what we do with that. But what we can do is talk about process in order to answer questions, in order to meet our duties, in order for us to move forward together. And that is all we are trying to do. And so, as your chief, I'm asking you to please ask your questions. Absolutely. And I've never walked away from any question, ever. I may not know the answer, and I will say that. And we may agree to disagree, but with respect, please, because I know that we were all raised that way. That's why we are good Cowsas people. So the people that are going to present today, they're not our lawyers. You probably, unless you see them someplace else, walking down the street, you won't see them again around Cowsas. Cowsas did not pay for these lawyers. It comes out of a fund, a loans program that the Government of Canada gives us when we apply. So there is no own source revenue, or we are not taking away from programs and services. This is coming from a loans program that we have already, with the handshake that we have been given from Canada in December 2023, as part of that handshake agreement, they have already told us that we will not have to repay those loans. They are going to be forgiven as part of that handshake. Now, as we know from treaty, we can't always count on that handshake, so I can't say with certainty that amount or exactly what has been part of that, but I can share that so that people can rest a little bit easier about it not coming out of our own accounts, about that there's some sort of scheme behind the curtain over there about new legal counsel. This is not what it's about. It's about meeting our duties and for our people, because we're smart. We are the smartest, well, I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like we're the smartest people that there are around. That's why we have those good intellectual, those passionate feelings. So today is about the one and done meeting our obligation, and also inviting guests to help us in the best way that they can in understanding and education. And then after that, they leave. And our work begins at the council table for what these processes have, what we've been told from our membership, and continue on with our 1907 lawyers. And that is what I didn't explain properly last night. And I apologize for that to our membership. And I apologize to that to our guests who were invited. So today I expect that we will have some good conversation. But I thought that if we got that out of the way right now, that maybe there will be a little bit of, I guess, an easing of concern in regards to that. But we do have these legal obligations as your elected people to do this work. And so we're asking you to please walk with us in that, because we're doing the best that we can. And so with that, the way that we're going to have it, as Judge Morin had explained, is we're going to try and make them as short as possible, but as clear as possible with what we're going to be doing. Or I shouldn't say what we're going to be doing, like what we're going to be doing today. What we're going to be doing today, I asked everybody to be as clear and concise, but as short as possible. And they will be here to answer questions. Your counsel are here to answer questions. And I am here to answer questions. And I want to thank the people who have been praying, both at the lodges and the pipes, and acknowledge all of the people that have worked on this claim, the people that are going to benefit from this claim, our council, and I believe that we have all of our council. Councillor Jennifer is in Regina at a Board of Governors meeting. She was there last evening, so she's not here because she doesn't want to be. She's here because she's conducting other CAUSAS business, but everybody else is here. And so thank you for listening, and with the utmost respect and love, I thank you for coming today, and I look forward to this afternoon. Thank you.
So with that, maybe we can get Stephanie Lavallee to do her presentation.
Thank you to everyone for being here. So we're here today because some of our members wrote letters to the council requesting to have a special assembly under our constitution. And so that's the reason why we're here today. And questions were asked about contingency fees, about the draft trust agreement that we have. And so in order to answer those questions, I would just want to provide the information from the questions that were asked so that you all have an idea of what has been asked, and as well as the answers. So one of the first questions was, what are the contingency agreements, and are they fair? So in 1998, the nation entered into a written contingency fee agreement with Griffin, Toes, Madigan, Brabant, and independent legal advice was obtained for that original agreement. And then in 2017, the nation entered into an amended contingency fee agreement with Griffin, Toes, Madigan, and Brabant and Company, who had by this time split into two different firms. And so for that agreement that was signed in 2017, there's nothing to suggest that an independent legal advice was obtained for that amended agreement. And as Chief was saying, Al Brabant and Dan Madigan have been part of this process with me, and they provided me with all of the information that they wanted to have considered when we had the independent assessment done on their legal fees. and they didn't provide another legal opinion for that agreement that was signed in 2017. And then the records that we have available to us also don't show that there was independent legal advice given at that time. And I'll tell you why that's important for the nation. For the nation should have gotten independent legal advice on that amended contingency agreement, and that matters that they didn't have that advice before they signed that agreement. And so there are important rules in respect to avoiding the creation of a conflict of interest. There's rules around predatory contingency agreements, and there's rules against preventing your client from changing their counsel, as well as there's rules around fair and reasonable contingency fee agreements. In addition to that, a lawyer must not act or continue to act for a client where there is a conflict of interest. A lawyer must not change, charge, or accept a fee or disbursement, including interest, unless it is fair and reasonable and has been disclosed in a timely fashion. There are also duties involved here. So lawyers have fiduciary duties to their clients, and so here our 1907 lawyers have a fiduciary duty to the whole nation. They have a duty to explain the basis of their fees and their disbursements, and they have a duty to avoid disproportionate contingency fees. And so I don't know what those conversations were in 2017, but I know that the agreement was signed, and I know that there was not legal advice obtained to say whether or not that was a fair contingency fee agreement. And as Chief said, the 1907 lawyers have not been invited here today because they have that financial interest in the settlement of our land claim. And they're in a conflict and cannot come here and advise the nation why their fees are reasonable. And we'll save our questions till the end, just so that I can get through this. I only have...
I think there is a point to the presentation, okay? We need information to make a full... I appreciate that, and I know that.
I honestly feel that this is a ploy to get us at each other's throats.
No, I do not think so. No, I do not think so. We'll go ahead with the presentation. We'll take your questions after, okay? Thank you.
So one of the most important things in that amended contingency agreement is Section 4. That section replaced paragraph 7 of the original agreement, and it's right here in black and white. It says that it would require, that contingency agreement requires the nation to deposit all of their settlement proceeds in the 1907 claim into the trust account of Griffin Toes Madigan or Brabant and Company. And then from there, it would get held for 30 days, and then it would be distributed in accordance with the contingency agreement. And so normally, and this is where the conflict arises. Normally, a nation's settlement funds are not going to go to a lawyer, they're going to go to a corporate trustee, which is what should happen here. Section 4 of the contingency agreement further sets out that Griffin Toes Madigan Brabant can bill the nation for fees on an hourly basis in connection with legal or negotiating work if there are Indian Claims Commission's funds or loan funds made available from Canada. However, all fees paid to the lawyers out of these funds shall be set off against the 10% contingency fee. The exception is that if Canada forgives repayment of any loan funding to the nation, those funds shall be in addition to the 10% fee. So that means that all the fees and disbursements and payments that they've been given till now are second payments in addition to what they're going to get out of once the claim is settled. And then Section 5 of that amended contingency agreement added a new paragraph 13 to that contingency agreement, which provides punitive terms providing for increased payments if the nation terminates the contingency agreement. So here's what's concerning. Under the Specific Claims Tribunal, there was a $150 million cap on specific land claims in the early 2000s. So the original contingency agreement was entered into with that monetary fee in mind. And 10% on 150 million is 15 million. When the contingency agreement was amended in 2017, there were fundamental terms that were changed. And those are the terms I just went through. That is a major change that requires advisement. And there's nothing to suggest that those changes had been advised to the council at that time. So there's nothing to suggest that chief and council were advised to obtain independent legal advice, or were advised on the lawyer's decision to include language into the draft trust agreement that would require the corporate trustee to pay their full fees within 7 days. As the nation was not advised of this change, they are unable to have consented to that. And so going back to the, sorry, can you go back? So go back and think about that 150 million. The argument could be made that because the lawyers knew what the cap was, they also knew what their payment was going to be at the end. And so the question then becomes, where was that lawyer's risk? What was their risk in taking on our land claim when they knew how much they were going to get paid at the end? In addition to that, they've been paid through the CERNAC funding, $200,000 a year. That CERNAC funding is supposed to be not only for lawyers' fees, but for things like this, for community engagements, and for us to talk about the process with the membership. But all that money has gone to those lawyers instead. It hasn't gone to anything like this until this year. This year, we're applying for that money, and that money is going to be used for community meetings like this to talk about the trust process going forward. A contingency agreement with a lawyer is not like a normal contract. Lawyers can only be paid what is fair and reasonable, regardless of what's written in that agreement. They cannot take money. That would be like them winning a lottery. Determining the fees now is what's best for the membership and your settlement money. And determining those fees now is not a criticism of the previous chief and councils that signed those agreements. This has nothing to do with that. But determining these fees for your money is what's important. And no matter what is written in the contingency agreement, the fees when they are billed must be fair and reasonable. And this is what's being figured out now before that money is released by Canada. And at the end of the day, the legal fees that are tied to this trust is $26 million. That is a substantial amount of your money. That's your money, not mine, not any one person. It belongs to the whole nation. It belongs to our ancestors for the reason why we're getting this settlement. It belongs to us, our children, our grandchildren. That's your money. And then as Chief was saying, we have had an independent legal opinion on those legal fees, and the council was advised on that report. It was presented to them, and in that report, there was an advisement that this matter about the fees should be taken to the court for the court to decide what's fair and reasonable. And that's fair because it takes that decision away from everyone, and it's the court who will decide what is fair and reasonable. And another thing is that back in those days when this agreement was first signed in 1998, 10% was the going rate at that time. And then even in 2017, when that fee arrangement changed to 10% and then 5%, 10% on the first 75 million, and then 5% thereafter. Even that is not a normal percentage rate in today's legal climate. And what the courts have been saying, the courts have been saying that a fair and reasonable percentage on settlements like this is 4 to 6%. The most important thing to take away about the draft trust agreement that we have is this. Article 7 has been written right into the trust agreement, which directs the payment of $25,687,000. Okay, I'm not good with money, but essentially it's $26 million to the legal counsel. So the lawyers have ensured that their payment is written directly into the trust document and what they will be paid through our trust, through the nation's trust document, which is an unusual thing to do. And so, as I was saying before, nothing suggests that chief and counsel were advised to obtain independent legal advice or were advised to the lawyer's decision to include language in this draft trust agreement that would require the corporate trustee to pay the full fees within 7 days. And the nation, because the nation was not advised of this change, they're unable to have consented to it. And so this is the part of due diligence that is being done to consider these fees and question whether they're fair and reasonable. And this is something that should be expected on a settlement this large. This is a monumental amount of money that the nation is going to be getting that the nation will probably never see again. So it's important to make these decisions now and to do these considerations now before Canada releases that money. And membership should be, they should be alarmed if the nation was not trying to do due diligence on this. And this is what is happening now. And so it's important to think about this too, because no matter what happens with these fees, it's not going to stop Canada releasing the money to the nation. The nation is still going to see their land claim deposited into their corporate trustee as long as that one provision is changed. And then also think about, like, everyone's going to get a per capita distribution, right? But at some point when that is spent, you're going to wonder, why did we pay that much money? And then you'll also be wanting to know, like, what are we going to do with that trust money now? How is that going to work for me and my kids and my grandchildren? How can that benefit us? So I think it's just good practice for us to be concerned about these fees now and consider what to do about it.
Thank you. I think that we should allow for some questions to a certain extent. I know that Bruce, Sam, will be doing their presentation and might be able to answer some of those questions that will arise from that. Okay? So if we could do that, you take a few minutes to do that right now.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name's Bruce McIver from First Peoples Law. I want to say thanks for the prayer. Thanks for the meal. Thanks for inviting us here to be here today. I'm originally from St. Peter's in Manitoba. I'm the senior partner at First Peoples Law. Our firm only works for First Nations all across the country, and we have extensive experience on specific claims and trusts. And so we've been asked to advise on the proposed trust agreement. As you heard from the chief, we're not here to replace your 1907 lawyers. That's not what we've been asked to do. I've known Al Brabant for a long time. I'm sure he's done very good work on your claim. I work with him on different files here in Saskatchewan. It's So it's not about that. It's like what you heard the chief and you heard Stephanie say. There is an obligation on your leadership to ensure it gets independent legal advice to protect you. This is about protecting your interests, your children, and future generations. It's not a criticism, it's a requirement. It's a requirement when you have a claim this big that you get independent advice, leadership gets independent advice, and then you decide. Lawyers aren't deciding for you. You decide, but it's such an important decision and there's so much money at stake. You want to ensure that your interests are protected. That's standard procedure, as you heard from the chief, particularly given some situations that have occurred where these matters have gone to court because nations have said, we didn't know, we didn't get advice. And the courts have said, you need to get advice. So that's what's occurring. You decide ultimately. I'm going to pass it over to Sam to talk about the trust. There's just one thing I'll reiterate from what Stephanie said. We looked at the draft trust agreement provided. There's a provision in there written in that the 1907 lawyers would be, the corporate trustee would be directed to pay them this contingency fee directly. We do not advise that. That you will need to pay money to your lawyers. That's the fact of it. It's how much. It's not that people are working for free. No, a reasonable fee will be paid. But you need to decide that, negotiate that separately from your trust agreement. That's a separate thing, because if not, you don't get a chance to inquire and decide and get all the facts and make your own decision. It should not be for your corporate trustee to just be told you have to pay this money. That should be a separate thing. Your trust should deal with what is your vision for the future. It's not about lawyers. It's about you and your community. That's what your trust, your contingency fee and your lawyer fees, decide that, figure that out separate, okay? And that needs to be done. As you heard, there's been an independent legal opinion on the current contingency arrangement. Nothing's done, but there's been advice given, not by my firm, but by another firm, to Chief and Counsel. Now, Chief and Counsel have an obligation to act on that advice because they have an obligation to protect you, protect all members. So now they have it. As Stephanie said, they can't disclose it, right? But nothing's finished. Now that they've got that, they need to go back to your 1907 lawyers and ask some questions. And I'm sure they'll provide the information. They're not unreasonable people. Like I say, I know Al. But this is about fulfilling your obligation. So they have that opinion on whether the current contingency is fair and reasonable. The opinion has raised serious questions. And so now you just need to have that conversation with your 1907 lawyers. They might have all the answers. Fine. But you need to do your due diligence to protect yourself and protect the future. Okay, so our job is just to assist you as much as possible. Make sure you get to the best place so you can decide. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Sam, because Sam does this work about trust agreements all across the country for our First Nation clients. We have a lot of experience how to develop a trust agreement You decide, you do whatever you want, but we'll talk about some of the main principles that we see. Okay? Thank you.
I'll tell you what, I'll keep my remarks to under, let's say 2.5 minutes. I'll give myself 2.5 minutes so that we can move on to questions. So I see our slides up. I'm going to skip a few slides. Next one, next one. This is all I want to talk about. And I want to reiterate that our firm, First People's Law, is playing a very, very small role in your 1907 claim, and we're not trying to play a bigger role than what we've been asked to do. We're providing independent advice on the trust agreement that's been drafted, as well as the process of how to develop a trust. And this slide, I don't know that everyone can see it, the text is probably small, but all this slide, and this has fundamentally been our advice to counsel, the process to develop a trust. And a trust is really just the vehicle, it sets the rules for how a large amount of money that's going to be coming from your 1907 claim, how it's managed for generations to come. Trusts generally last at least 50 years, sometimes 80 years, sometimes more. So all that we have been trying to advise counsel and now advise Cowessess citizens is that the fundamental key piece of establishing a trust is ensuring that you're doing your visioning exercise at the outset. And you'll see that exercise is really the biggest piece of establishing a trust. It's not the lawyer sitting down and writing the agreement. That's the easy part. The hard part is doing the work up front to make sure that Cowessess citizens are providing their input ahead of time, before a trust gets developed and it's kind of taken off the shelf, right? Ensuring that there's membership engagement ahead of time, that you're prioritizing how do we want to see these funds managed and spent, what kind of safeguards do we want to put on these funds, where are our priorities as a nation. That should fundamentally come at the outset, right? And that's the stage that you're at now, okay? From there, you assemble a team of members, a team of counsel, a team of advisors, right? So that's financial advisors, because it's fundamentally a financial document. It's a financial management document. So you want to make sure that you have really strong financial advice. You want to make sure that you have good legal advice, right? And you want to make sure that folks within the nation are feeding into that trust to make sure that it's a trust that represents Cowessess, doesn't just kind of, it's not garden variety, let's say, okay? Once that hard work is done at the outset, then you develop your agreement, you establish your trust, and then the next big piece is implementation for the next generation and the next generation and the generations to come, right? So that's really all we wanted to say today. I'm here, I've drafted a lot of trust agreements. I'm not looking to take over for Al and Dan. That's not what we're here to do. I'm happy to answer questions that you may have about trusts and about drafting trusts, but that's really all we wanted to say.
Good afternoon. Thank you for finally allowing me to ask my questions. First of all, I want to look around the room and online, and you see a lot of the members here are over 60 plus. I really like seeing that. I agree we do need more youth, but that's up to us to bring those youth and get them engaged. I'm kind of disappointed at some of the words that were being said last night and tonight or this afternoon. We are not members that come to meetings and cause shit and want to create disturbance or nothing. We don't need security. You know, that was kind of insulting, you know, to think that, oh, we come to meetings and they're always shut down. Twice they've been shut down by one member. So like we're not as wild as everyone says we are. We're vocal, we're diverse, we have our own opinions. Our parents raised us to speak our opinion and be a part of a community that is worldwide, not just on Cowessess, not just in Canada. We have members all over. It's them who choose to be a part of our community. And in saying that, you know, like it's up to members to be involved. Council can't get people to come and vote. Council can't get people to come and go to meetings. That's up to members. That's your own accountability that you bring. And a lot of the people in this room have been accountable to the nation for all of my life. You know, we know what we want. We know what we need. We know the questions when they're not answered. It's frustrating. So my comment, I guess, today is, aside from the fact that we're talking about contingencies and lawyers and payments, the real objective here is all before the cart's before the horse. It's not even approved in Parliament. Like, where is that? Where is that being lobbied against in Ottawa? We're talking about a trust agreement that's not even approved by Ottawa yet. Who's there lobbying for us? You know, our lobbyists we had at the end of the term, we had a lobbyist there. The trust was ready to go. You know, then it all gets skyboshed. Now my question is, with this legal opinion or contingencies or reviewing and talking about it going to court because of cost paying to a lawyer that's been doing our work for us for over 30 years with the best interest of CAUSES members, not their members, their interest were for us, not for themselves, 30 plus years working on this. And then to say, oh yeah, now we don't want to pay them what they're worth, is going to court to get a legal opinion gonna stop the trust from getting approved in Ottawa? That's where it really needs to be pushed through, not the payments. It needs to be pushed through in Ottawa. When is that gonna happen? How is that going? You know, is it gonna be stalled again? Is what's happening now gonna lose our trust agreement that we've been working so hard on? You know, that our seniors are now seniors working on it. You know, I'm really hurt to know that that's how some people of our nation view us on the nation. We are vocal, we are voiceful, we are diverse, and we are educated, and we know what we want. Hi, thank you.
It's pretty sad when you get told, keep it nice. I am nice. I'm just very emotional. One of the things that I have to ask is, where is our confirmation? Like Denise said, you are putting the cart before the horse. We're creating a lot of animosity here when we don't even have that confirmation that this money is coming. We do know there is going to be a trust. We do know that we have to decide on how that trust works. But how do we get there when we can't even trust our own chief and council to follow policies and procedures to establish committees? You know, if you're throwing in people just left and right like that, that's not a good way. We have policies. And if we're not fulfilling those already or abiding by those, we're causing more problems in the end. How did you guys advise our council on that? How did you advise them to select committees? What did you tell them? That's what you should have shared here. I really would like to know, because if they are aware and you really shared the proper information, then they would be in a position to make the right decisions. Thank you.
I'll respond to that briefly. The advice that we've given has not been on the specifics of how to set up a committee. That's an internal governance discussion. Our advice to council has been on their responsibility, their fiduciary obligations to ensure that that input is being gathered. How it's done is up to leadership and up to membership.
As we said, we'll do our best to respond to the questions that we can assist you with. So there was a question before about if there are concerns raised about the contingency fee, will that hold up a settlement? No, these are separate things, right? And okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, as far as I'm aware, there's been no decision to go to court to review something. There's a lot of work to be done. There are conversations need to be had with your 1907 lawyers. But now you're equipped to do it because you've got some independent advice that asks questions. And now, and I'm sure they'll want to share the information. But you need to ask those questions about the contingency agreement now that you've got that advice. I expect it can be resolved, right? And there's no doubt that they will get paid. They've done good work for you for a long time. They deserve to get paid a fair and reasonable amount. No doubt about that, right? But it also needs to be fair and reasonable. So that's what you need to ensure, because you've got a responsibility to everyone, right? So no, this comes up sometimes. Like I say, I've done this work all across the country. We'll have clients, oh, well, if we get into a conversation about the fees, does that mean it's going to hold up the settlement? No. These are separate things. There is a lot of work to do still to get the settlement across the line. It sounds like Canada is not moving as fast. You've got leadership. You're all there to push it. But the contingency fee, the lawyer fees, that's separate. Okay? Thank you.
Just also to talk about the cart before the horse. In actuality, we've actually been asking the lawyers to slow down the process so that we could engage in more community engagement. The lawyers last year had actually asked us as chief and counsel to start deciding on the terms of the draft agreement. So it is not the cart before the horse. The lawyers actually have had the draft agreement for about a year, and they have said, we have to get this done, we have to get this done. And so that's when it was when I went to Stefan Machiation, and he is the Director General of all specific claims across Canada, and he's been very, very good at advising myself on how I could be the best chief in order to make sure that this claim gets completed as soon as possible. And also what we can do to ensure that we meet our obligations, not only as chief and counsel, but also as the ones who are alive today for future people. So I know that Auntie Kay had a question, and she had a question before about when I think it was Stephanie that was doing it, and I think it's really important to answer that one as well. So I encourage you to ask that question. And but it's not putting the cart before the horse. But interestingly enough, in saying that, while we have kind of put the brakes to ensuring that we're doing all of our duties, plus also to want to have more of our membership engagement rather than just chief and counsel, because some chiefs and councils do that. Like it's not uncommon that chiefs and councils will work with the lawyers, and they will pretty much do the entire draft agreement. That's somewhat standard process, and that's fine. And that's also what we were talking about. But what we wanted, and what part of our fiduciary obligation was, is that if memberships say that's what you want us to do, then we'll do that. But also, because then we have had informed consent. And so education and informed consent. But also, if you say to us, because we have amazing 55 plus seniors here and in the city, and we have different ways we can go along that community engagement, and Al and Dan will be leading that. And we as council can say to them that, you know, the trust needs to have more CAUSIS involvement, and not just from chief and council, but from our membership. And they probably won't, because it's also not common to bring out a draft trust and just say, here, membership, go through this draft trust, because very few of us are lawyers, and that could, you know, that we need, or accountants, because it's a financial document. But they can engage with a process that would have themes in it, and then we can talk about what's important and what our priorities are. So that's really what we're talking about here, is getting that direction. And now we have it. So I shouldn't say we haven't received the direction yet, but after yesterday and today, we have met our fiduciary obligation in doing this. And then it moves on. So cart before the horse, no, but also it's important, and there are ways that we could, mechanisms to make sure that we have a trust that Kausas people want us to have. And that won't hold up the monies in Ottawa at all, because that was one of the questions I asked directly of Canada. As we embark on this, will this process, now I want to say to everybody again, it's not just Kausas. We have a high value claim, and there are 8 of us across Canada. There's 8 of us, and apparently all 8 are sitting on the Prime Minister's desk, and it's not right now a priority for him. And so, well, that's exactly it. There has been a visit by 2 council members and myself that went to Ottawa and met with the Deputy Minister and also the Finance Minister. There have been senators, the Saskatchewan senators that have been there and have been pushing, as well as all 8 First Nations that have those high value claims. Their lobbyists and ours have actually joined forces in order to get Canada to start looking at that high value claim. Quite honestly, the only claims that they are really looking at, and it just came with the spring economic statement, is the agricultural benefits, the cows and plows. So they want to start rushing those out the door with expediency. It's an expedited process because it's formula driven. Now, we have taken the advice, and we have talked about this with membership for at least the last year, 2 years, because this came up. Kausas has the offer from Canada to negotiate the cows and plows. This has not been a secret. We have said that right from the beginning. But we have brought to the people Al and Dan's advice to not move on the cows and plows because it will affect potentially affect the high value claim, and because they did a good job at negotiating. Past leadership and Al and Dan did a good job at negotiating that claim. And so the formula that they have is much higher than what the standard formula is for the cows and plows. And they will consider it double dipping, or that they've already compensated Kausas if we move forward on that cows and plows, and then it may move that 1907 back to negotiation, and that would also have us having to go for a lower amount with that 1907 because we've already been compensated for the cows, that loss with the cows and plows. So that is advice directly from Al and Dan that we as a council agreed to, and also that we have brought during our Christmas runs to the people. We have been very open with that, because also you could see right on the website, not the Kausas website, the ISC website, that it states right there that that they're waiting for Kausas to respond for the agricultural benefits. But because our 1907 is the closest to our hearts, we're not doing that right now. But we could if we wanted to take that chance. But we have also been told by our Katayak, our older people, not to do that as well, not to go for that fast, easy money, but to stay with that 1907. And that was on the advice of our 1907 lawyers. And we made that also That is a council decision.
Any more questions on that? Yes, over here.
I guess prior to moving on to any more questions, you know, we have elected council members sitting here in the room with us. I did attend a meeting in Regina last night, and we heard who was involved in obtaining the independent opinion. From what I understand, not all of council was involved in selecting that legal counsel to do that opinion on behalf of the nation. We hear in-house legal counsel talking about taking the fees to court. That wasn't mentioned within council at their table. Council didn't decide that. So who's making these big decisions on behalf of the nation? The chief and her in-house.
Been a decision to go to court yet. Yeah. Don't
We
yell.
have the right to keep our oh, you're not from here? You know, so, you know, just as I can continue, no, I'd like, you know, last night at the meeting in Regina, we requested that the council member come up and present to the membership what their opinions are, what their ideas are on this whole claim. What is their involvement on this whole claim?
We will
And,
get
you know,
to
for
them.
me, I'd like the
Let's-
council members come up and speak to the membership here.
We will get to them, as we did last night. I think I said in the beginning that the chief will have to answer quite a few questions. We certainly have, we'll take that question with her, and then we'll go online too, okay? We got 170 people online.
Okay, just a question for the council, I guess, and for our legal guys here. How and when are we going to pick trustees to administrate this 1907 claim? Because we need trustees in place in order for us to get any of that money. And I don't think the council or the chief is the people to be sitting on the trustee board. So as a nation, we have an obligation here to include our membership. And by including our membership, we have to choose trustees to represent us in a good way and to speak on behalf of us with the lawyers. So I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here by not choosing our trustees and not having them at the table. So that is my comment. And I would like really the council to sit down and gather applications to sit on the trustee board, to sit on the trustees, so that they could start making decisions besides the chief and council. I think that's all.
Thank you for that question, and I'm going to put it to the legal, but first when you ask about the chief and council, please at any time feel free that you could stand up and speak to this as well. The advice right now from the 1907 lawyers is that we go to a corporate trustee. So that being the case, it will not be like our TLE, it'll be a corporate trustee, so there won't be community trustees, and that is the legal advice from the 1907 lawyers. Pardon me? I am not a trust lawyer here, so I'm going to actually, Stephanie's in-house, but this is a trust lawyer who could speak to that.
Yeah, so a corporate trustee, there are different trust companies that work around Canada. There's a lot of the big banks have Indigenous trust companies. There's Peace Hills Trust, which is an Indigenous-owned trust company. There's First Nations Bank. So those are the kinds of folks we're talking about when Chief says corporate trustees.
I'm going to go in reverse order just because we're on that topic right now. What is the explanation from moving from what we have to a corporate trustee?
So I can kind of answer that question because, as Chief said, it was Alan Dan, your 1907 lawyers, who gave that advice to move to a corporate trustee. I can say that is my general advice to my clients when setting up a trust. Corporate trustees. The idea with a corporate trustee is the corporate trustee really doesn't have a lot of really any discretion, right? The corporate trustee is an administrator. They take the rules that are set out in a trust agreement, and they're just a referee. They just enforce the rules. They make sure that when there's an annual payment coming out of your trust, that annual payment is made on a timely basis. If there are PCDs being paid out of your trust, those PCDs are being paid on an annual basis. So it's not a decision-making role, so the corporate trustee plays a limited role, and then sometimes nations may set up a trust committee of members or something of that nature to have more of a decision-making process or discussions with council about let's set priorities for how money is spent and that sort of thing. So your corporate trustee plays a limited role, and I think that's where, when I've given that advice, that's where that's come from.
Okay, I just want to welcome everybody. It's really a nice crowd. You know, we're all band members and we're all interested, and this is something that is very, very dear to all of us. I have, I don't know if it's a concern or a comment. A while ago, there was a few of us elders that showed up at the council, and they were having a chief and council meeting. And we showed up there because we had concerns of the 1907. So we waited in the coffee room for well over an hour. And then finally, the message came back, no, they're not welcome in here because they're not our elders. So then we were told that. So then we got up, and the male elder that was with us took the lead, and we walked down to the hallway and went into the chambers. At that point, that's when the band meeting was set. Now, I've been hearing last night and today of how the council is working with the 1907 lawyers. And it was just recently that a council member got suspended for talking to the 1907 lawyer. So I think I'm a little confused. You've stated last night and today of how you're working with the 1907 lawyers. And everything that's coming and being presented, if that's true, then a lot of these issues should have been already worked out by the in-house lawyer with Al and them. So when we have comments and presentations being given that way, forgive me if I'm the only one confused, but let's just try and get on the same page here, and let's in fact work with the 1907 lawyers. Anyway, mitaki asen.
I'd like to respond to that because, and I would like for our council to also speak to this as well. First of all, we were unaware. I don't know if any of the other council, when we were holding that meeting, we were unaware that there were any elders that were in the coffee room. And only when you walked in, that was only when we as a council were aware that there were elders in the coffee room. And so that's when we were horrified that you all had to wait because we were unaware. And I have no idea where you heard that we said these are not our elders, because we were unaware at that time. We were just conducting business. And I tell you, we would all hold each other accountable in this if we knew that there were elders that were in the coffee room. But I encourage, for just not me just to say this, but as council members, we would never do that to our elders. I don't know, Brandon, you're holding the microphone. Did we know that there were any elders at that point?
Well, I know previous to that meeting, it's been a request at the table that we do bring former leaders, former elders, or into our chambers. It's never been acknowledged, and I do know that day that some of us did take it upon ourselves to invite some to see where it went, and we got the end result, and they were not invited into our chambers. But that's just kind of the way things are going. When we make suggestions, the other council can say yes or no to that, but I know it's been said in our chambers that we should have elders in our chambers, how it's done previously, and for this term, it's never went that way. And
That's absolutely true. I'm talking about this specific day, and I want to ask, like even Councillor Malcolm, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. We have had that discussion, and we talked about a fair process to have elders advise the council, and we've always talked about it, but we've never gotten there, and that's our fault. But it was never to say this is this elder or that elder, but I'm just asking for some help here.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you all here to take in the program here. You know, I got to kind of back up the chief here. I've been sitting in a council chamber a long time, and I always sit on this side. And the day that the elders came that morning, we didn't have a clue they were out there. You know, because as an elder myself or a senior, I would never let you sit out there for an hour and not be heard. You know, so I don't know who arranged that. You know, let's all show up at 11. You know, but the chief and council should have knew it prior that you're going to be there at 11, and I'm sure we would have made time for you. So when you say, I don't know where that come from either, that you're not our elders. You know, that's a bunch of crap. You know, so whoever's talking like that should kind of cool down and come and talk to us. You know, let us know. Like I said, if we knew they were out there, they would have been top priority. The agenda would have been put on hold to hear them out. And when you have something to say, you don't just come in and say, we have a meeting at 11, be there, chief and council, and turn around and walk out and not explain that. You know, so I apologize, you know, for the ones online. I apologize that I wasn't there last night. But business goes on down here too. So I stayed back and I worked with the people that were here. I was at the power grounds at the camp there for 2 days. You know, it's not that I disrespected the band members, the off-reserve band members, you know, but you guys got to give us a little rope too, you know. I mean, let us know. Like I said, if we knew you were there at 11 o'clock, you would have been top priority. Even I was surprised all of a sudden when they started opening the door and saying, 11 o'clock tomorrow, we want council there. You know, give us a break, man. We've been there a long time, and as far as I'm concerned, as a councillor, that's been there since the buffalo disappeared, you know, but I'm back and the buffalo are back, so that's a good thing. You know, but when it comes to ask, you know, I get a lot of calls from people, you know, hey, you know this, you know this. Well, did you phone the band office and ask? Did you request to meet with us? No? Well, what are you worried about then? You know, that's what we're there for. We're there to listen to the band members. You know, and like I'm feeling bad here, people saying that we disrespected our seniors there. We didn't even know they were there. So come on, get your story straight. You know, don't just put it on Facebook, you know, anonymous. You know, put your name under it and we'll answer you. Top way, and I love you all.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Chief.
Is there any more questions with respect to that area? 23?
I know we're a little bit off course right now because of the tensions in the room, but I wanted to ask if there was a flow chart. I know there's different phases for the trust agreement and how it's created, how it's implemented, how it's going to the government, and how it will be discussed between the nations. Is there a flow chart for people who do not completely understand this for us to view, like as a community, to just get a better understanding on it?
What a wonderful question. Thank you. And yes, there is. And actually, what we are trying to do is get all of these on the website as well as available in Regina and available at the band office for those that aren't too tech savvy. But there's an actual entire diagram that was presented to council with our 3 days, and we're pleased to share that with. And so I think there's about 7 bubbles, especially when it comes to the trust agreement, and we're at bubble 3. I think that's about where it goes, but I'm also not completely sure. But especially from our youth that are asking this and that can talk about it, because we need to have youth engagement, we will definitely prioritize getting that on the website and at the band office. And even, do you go to school down here? Oh, you look so young. That's the Cowsas water. But yes, we will have that available. We'll prioritize it.
We'll try and do a question from the people online. What is it? The question is, were Al and Dan the same lawyers when we got the TLE settlement? The answer is yes. What is the taxation implications with a corporate trustee? Good question.
I can answer that briefly. Generally, First Nations First Nations trusts are structured to be tax-free. They're taxed in the hands of the nation, which are tax exempt. And that's regardless of whether your corporate trustee is a group like First Nations Bank or Peace Hills Trust based on reserve, or if it's BMO or TD or RBC, you're going to be able to structure your trust so that you're not paying tax.
So why don't we pay Al, has been with Cowsas for how many decades? As he's not here to be greedy, we also have to look at how much he has dedicated as well.
And once again, council can ask to answer these questions at any time. And that has not, now that we have received that advice, we can have that conversation around the council table and then move forward. That's basically it, because there's absolutely no doubt that we have been dedicated, and all of us, and Al and Dan as well.
Okay, one from here. Is it everybody from this side? Anybody over here have questions?
We got a lot of questions over on
do?
this side. Hi, Richard Asakin, Cowsas First Nations. Hey. I know that the offer from the chief was to make a request, and I request that we create a committee of citizens from the nation to review drafts of all of what's going on. But also I have a comment, because I was on Chief and Council in previous, and it sounds like, and the opinion is, as we heard today from Stephanie, it looks like you guys want permission to go after previous Chief and Council for the contingency fees. It sounds like it. And that's perception. And I want to finish, because we need to move this forward across the finish line. It's just a matter of going to Ottawa. I think that divisive comments like that, to raise this doubt about what happened with contingency fees and to start digging into that kind of stuff, I don't think that's why we requested this meeting. We want to see the progress, we want to see where it lands, and we want to know when it's going to land. And so get it across the finish line. The divisive comments isn't helping anybody. Thanks.
To answer that question, there are questions about the contingency fees and whether they are fair and reasonable in the member requests for this meeting, and that's why they were answered, because they were asked about whether they were fair and reasonable, and so we're giving that information. And also, I think I made it clear that this has nothing to do with the chief and councils who signed these contingency agreements. That's done and over now. What matters is what happens next.
There was some comment earlier on there that Al and Dan might be invited to a different meeting. Is that our next meeting? Has that been discussed?
It's not my place to make that decision, but that's for the council to decide at their...
That was asked by members.
It was asked by a member.
It was asked by members
Last night. Well, that's going to be up to council.
Question, will Al and Dan be our legal team to handle our cows and plows since we took their advice not to proceed with the ag benefit, or will they be dumped? It's as clear as that.
The council in 2023, just like what happened in, Chief Cadmus talked about it last night, was that he said 3 and Bonnie said 5 legal firms that were interviewed in order to take on the new, to resurface our claim, our 1907. And we talked about this in 2023 when we started the whole cows and plows discussion, and it was decided at that time that that would also go for RFP, just like it did in 2017, just like it did in 1998. And so it's not a matter of them being dumped. They're not being dumped anywhere. They're doing their 1907, but just like what happened in 2017, and we actually talked about this right in Al's office. We talked about this right in Al's office in 2023, that we would have to go for an RFP.
There's one question here that's quite on point. If this goes to courts, will this take longer? I think it's part and parcel of your comments there. That's a question that's online. So if this goes to court on the contingency fees, will it take longer, or can the trust be separate?
Thanks. There's been no conversation about going to court, so that's not a conversation that's going on. I expect you'll resolve this far short of court. These things are separate, right? Like I said before, resolving your contingency fee, separate from the trust and separate from getting the settlement agreement. They're separate things, right? They can move forward. They won't be held up. Okay? Thank you.
Good day. I'm Kelly Fremont, and I'm also a Cows Band member. I guess I got some concerns. I'm confused about this whole process as well, not only about this process that we are in now, this meeting. I'm wondering why are we not, how we got here with our judge and a couple of lawyers. We should have regular band meetings, I'm sorry to say, but where this information should come out. So then, because all we had has been informational meetings, and all the things, it just creates confusion and animosity amongst each other, amongst our council, and it's not good. You know, we are a large band, and we have bringing in other people come and hear our business. Then it goes elsewhere. And the thing is, I'm really hurt because we got how do you say that? No. Condescending when our elder was speaking, and you guys just both right there like that, just spoke harsh. You know, that's not respect. And you going ahead and just speaking, and even Stephanie going ahead with the presentation, and there was some, yes, we can wait for the questions, but not That's not respectful way. And I feel sorry for you. Yes, I know it's a big job, but we also have to be able to listen to our people. Come to meetings, come to and have band meetings, so then we know what's going on with our First Nation. I don't even know some of these people here, or why were they hired, or where are they getting paid from our in-service here council? How is this guy getting paid here today, you know? That's questions we ask at our, in the community. Like, I don't ask that, but I'm hearing it. I hear it on all over. You know, it's not good. We should be able to be free and being able to ask questions without the members over there looking at us hard, you know. We are here for the membership of our people, and that's what I want to say is, and I agree with him. Let's put some trustees in place that are our own Cowes First Nation members and not appointed. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize if you felt I was yelling at somebody, but I do have a loud voice. I realize that. My experience in terms of dealing with these type of matters goes back quite a ways. I've often been asked by the federal court to deal with community meetings of this sort. Everything from dealing with getting rid of chief and council in one First Nation to mediating the whole child welfare agreement that's now in Ottawa. Okay? I've been dealing with that for the past 2.5 years. I got asked by the late Murray Sinclair if I would look at helping out that child welfare agreement so he could move ahead. He was not in a position, he was not in a good place. He asked me if he could put my name forward in dealing with that. So yes, I'm used to dealing with large issues. I'm used to dealing with those type of things. In all the years that I have been a judge, I have dealt with people that are in very bad situations, and some would get emotional. Some will even swear at you. Those things don't hurt in terms of me. But I know that they're in that place. I'm not trying to put anybody down, okay? But we looked at trying to get a process and to move ahead, with all due respect. Okay? We do want to move things. We want to hear you, but at the same time, I think it works two ways. But we'll get to you first. Are you waving to get heard, or which one? Where? Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll determine that. Go ahead.
Okay. So thank.
Go ahead.
All right, thanks. I do have questions, and I also have some comments, and I have some concerns. But so I'll just try to be as quick and as brief as I can with my questions. I do want to know, Chief, you talked about case law has changed the situation and has placed greater fiduciary obligations on leadership in terms of how they deal with these kinds of trust agreements and these kinds of settlements. So I want to know what case law. I don't know if you know it off the top of your head, but I do want to know what case law are you referring to, like specific cases that we could go and take a look at and read. So I would like to know, number one, what case law are you referring to with that places this greater obligation, fiduciary obligation on chief and council? So that's one of the questions that I put online last night. It didn't make it to the Q&A period, but I do have that question. The comment and concern I have has to do with the processing, and it's along the same lines of the process that was being followed for the Election Act. Like, it's a flawed process in my mind, and it's this flawed process that has created this disharmony and disunity and these hard feelings. And I see the flow chart there on how a trust should be developed. Why wasn't that done? You know, why wasn't community members engaged and talked to about what we wanted to see in a trust agreement? Why was the first draft of a trust agreement brought to membership? You know, it's a first draft. You've been in negotiations before. All of you have been in negotiations before from leadership. You get a first draft, you talk about it, you negotiate whatever terms you want, and then you present it. So I have a problem with that first draft of the trust agreement automatically being brought to us without Chief and Council trying to resolve some of these issues. I agree with Stephanie, it feels like a witch hunt, and it may not have intended to be a witch hunt. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, but to me it feels like a witch hunt. It feels like Al and Dan presented something and you have concerns with it and you brought it right to membership without doing, you did the due diligence of getting a legal opinion, but did you go back and talk to them about it? And was there a back and forth? Was there a negotiation back and forth between council, not just chief and in-house legal, and was there, you know, and is this the second draft or the third draft or the fourth draft? Like, what are we seeing? And I do have also a concern about the independent legal advisors coming here and presenting to us without us even having had a chance to hear from Al and Dan. And that was brought up last night. It's like, I know this isn't a hearing, but what came to my mind was the procedural, natural justice and procedural fairness. Like, it feels like, again, it's a feeling, it feels like that hasn't been followed. We didn't even get to hear from Al and Dan. And all of a sudden, we're hearing lawyers critiquing and our in-house legal speaking very forcefully against what they did when we haven't even heard from them. So again, that whole idea of, you know, natural justice and procedural fairness, the lawyers will know and the judge will know what that's all about. It feels like that's been overlooked and hasn't been followed, and it's like, feels like a witch hunt. I agree, Stephanie, it feels like a witch hunt. And I think that Al and Dan should have had a chance and an opportunity to come and talk to us about this trust agreement. I think Chief and Council should have did their due diligence by negotiating with Al and Dan for as long as they could and for as often as they could until Chief and Council could come to an agreement and bring an agreement to us that could be explained to us in a way that was understood. So that's my concerns and that's my questions on the case law that you're referring to. And, you know, why wasn't that process followed, you know, to come to us? Elder Carroll asked about a committee of community trustees, and you said, nope, that's recommended by the 1907 lawyers that it go to a corporate trustee. Well, again, that's not following that process where your independent legal advisor said, this is the process. You should go to community and find out what community wants. Well, we just heard what community wants, and, well, one community members, and without even giving an opportunity to discuss that with community, it was shut down and said, no, 1907 legal recommended, their legal opinion was that we have a corporate trustee. So there's all of these discrepancies. There's concerns that I have. Oh, and one more. Last night, Stephanie was asked what's a fair range for these types of settlements, and she said 4 to 6%. And in terms of the total value of the settlement, we've, in a roundabout way, heard 440 million, we've heard 445 million, and we've heard 450 million. Multiply any of those by 6%, it's going to be 26 million, which is exactly what the lawyers' fees and contingency fees are. So it's right within that ballpark. It's not, the legal fees are not at the 10%, 12% range that Maurice Law was being challenged on. I think they were challenged on 12% fees. But yeah, multiply 440 million, 445 million, 450 million by 6%, you're going to get 26 million, which is exactly where Al and Dan's legal fees are at. So is this just, again, feels like a witch hunt? That's my comments.
Smoke break. Nah, no, I'm just joking. And anyway, when you talk about corporate trustees and that, you know, we are going to be reaching out, as far as I'm concerned, as a council, to the band membership for some trustees or corporate trustees or whatever. Because when it comes to that, you have to be careful. You have to have more trustees that live on the nation than off the nation. So you're not going to be left out on selecting the trustees. I don't know where Al and whoever it is getting that corporate, huh? Al and Dan, yeah. Yeah, it's like anything else, like our TLE trustees, most of them are more on reserve, and that's got a lot to do with the taxation part. If you have more committee members that live off the reserve, then you're liable for taxations. So we will be reaching out for trustees for the claim here. You know, and a lot of times is people are getting mixed up between the 07 and the cows and plows from what I'm gathering. You know, the cows and plows could be a vote from the membership on a little payout. No, it could be all paid out on the cows and plows if the membership want that. Whereas the 07 has to be discussed, you know, because that's not a payout. You know, the 07, we could maybe arrange something where, okay, all band members, you know, 5,000 every Christmas out of the 07. But anyway, that's just what I wanted to say. So I'm not worried about the trustees because there will be majority on the reserve as band members. But anyway, if oh no, I'm in the wrong place here. All right. No, I just think people have to understand the difference between 07 and cows and plows payouts and the trustees. Tapwe, love you all.
Thank you, Councillor. And also, we have already with our two trusts, so the flood claim is a corporate trustee, and the TLE is a community trustee. So we already have a combination of the two. And I want to say, Richard, I agree with you. I completely agree with you, probably the first time, but I agree with you, right? That we do need to have a group of members that work with council in order to review these trusts and also to help the lawyers and to help us as council go and talk to membership. Now, I have to say this on behalf of our council, other than our councillor member who himself said that he was here since the extinction and now the recoming of the buffalo. Other than that, we are a new chief and council for the most part for us sitting there. And in some ways that may be a positive thing, and in some ways it might not be a positive thing. And I will be the first one to say as chief that I missed some things. I missed some things because of that's the first time that I've been there. And so I wish that I had received advice in order to, and our council to receive advice right from the beginning to come and have these, because I don't know if Kelly went for a smoke. But I also wanted to speak with her that we do need to do better with that communications. That's absolutely true. And also on top of that, we need to have those meetings, and that's exactly what I was talking about when I first started talking, was that we want to do more of those meetings with membership so that you can guide this and make this a CAUSIS document. That's really what it's about. So I am going to be the first one to bring it to the table and recommend that we have a members committee and a call out for a members committee to help draft the trust and to put together that process map in order for us to have a process set, as Kelly had asked for, like what is the process, and having it discussed and having more meetings and putting together that process in order for us to both at home here and outside of home, in order to have that ability to work together on that. So absolutely, and that's what we're here for, is to say, be the first ones. We should be the first ones to be able to say we could have done better. And I'm telling you right now as chief, that is a lot of the inexperience that I brought to the table, and I wish that it was sooner, and I also wish that I had gotten advice, because I would have listened. But we were basically, it was about us as a chief and council making these decisions. And so now we've heard from the membership, and honestly, I'm really glad about that. So thank you.
There was some question with respect to case law, and we're going to try and get that dealt with. Well, I think, I think she'll tell you the name, but I don't know if she was going to give you a citation. But you can look at the name. Yeah.
So there's a couple of them. You don't want me to tell you what they're about, that you just want me to list them? Okay. One of them is, One Arrow First Nation versus Maurice Law. That's from 2025 in Saskatchewan Kings Bench. So in that case, a bunch of First Nations challenged the contingency fee agreements after their settlements were reached. They argued that those were unfair, and then the court found that those agreements and termination provisions inside them were unfair and unreasonable. The court struck out those termination provisions for making it practically impossible for those nations to change lawyers. Okay, so that was one of them. Another one is Duboff Edward Schachter versus Buffalo River Dene Nation. Duboff, D-U-B-O-F-F, Edwards. Schachter, S-C-H-A-C-H-T-E-R, versus Buffalo River Dene Nation. And that's 2024 from Saskatchewan Kings Bench. So in that case, the lawyers sought a multi-million-dollar fee following successful First Nations land claim. The court reviewed whether that fee was fair and reasonable. The court upheld that it was a substantial fee, but reduced it to a level that the court considered fair and reasonable. What?
You're not answering my question. My question was last night, and kind of today, Chief referred to there being a higher fiduciary obligation being placed on Chief and Council due to change in case law. That wasn't there in 2017, and that wasn't there in 1998, and that's why you're doing this, is because there's a higher fiduciary obligation being placed on Chief and Council due to emerging case law. Okay. So what is that case law?
Well, I'm listing them to you. There's a bunch of them.
This is about contingency fees. It's not about fiduciary.
If you were to read the whole case, it would also talk about those extra duties.
Okay, so that's why I asked. Just give me the cases and I'll read them myself, because you're not talking about what I asked.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so there's another case called Zipchen versus Bainbridge. Zipchen, Z-I-P-C-H-E-N, versus Bainbridge. Bainbridge. It's 2025 Saskatchewan Queen's Bench, and it was upheld in Saskatchewan Court of Appeal in 2008. And then there's another case called Nuchai versus Nabagabo Corbier Jinnaman Jig Jig Barristers. Okay, you have that one? Okay.
That's the Robinson-Huron, right?
Yeah.
Annuities?
Okay. So in addition to what you're asking for, in this settlement agreement, like the whole entire settlement agreement, when the nation continues negotiations with Canada about what the settlement is going to be, like what's going to make it be forever, that settlement, the chief has to certify to Canada that she has gotten independent legal advice on the agreement and on everything. So she has to certify that to Canada that that's been done and that the nation has done its due diligence, and that's part of what this is about. And I wouldn't have pointed out those things in my presentation if they weren't there written in black and white, and it's my job to let the people know that because that's what's been asked.
And also, and thank you. I just also want to say that there's that, but also the cases where actual band members are taking chiefs and councils to court. We could get that to you as well, but it's about, it's not only that's already in there, it's about like there's almost a citizens or membership uprising with chief and council to make chief and council accountable to the membership. And that's what we're talking about. So we'll get those ones to you as well. So those two different types of cases.
Yeah, those cases will show up in different cases with the same amount. And it's what we call the main reason for the decision. And then there's all the discussion about the law. That's where you'll get more in that discussion. Now, Guibo, Maurice, those are the key words. And contingency agreement. Yeah. Fair and reasonable. Yeah, fair and reasonable is the other one. Yeah. Yeah. What would stop somebody from starting an action saying that the chief did not do her due diligence in making sure that the amount paid was correct or at least fair and reasonable? That's what is being talked about.
So that's why it's important that all of council be involved in these discussions and decisions, not just the chief and the in-house legal.
Well, I think the initial discussions are there.
And as we heard from council last night, they haven't been involved. And we were made aware that when the council did go and speak to the 1907 lawyers, several of them were suspended by the chief. So that's where these concerns are coming from, and that's where these comments are coming from.
First of all, I don't have the power to suspend, and I did not suspend any council members. What I did was remove the areas of responsibility, and it was very clear in the letter that it stated that all the general duties of the person as the council member were still required and it were still expected. And where that came from was from an actual council decision, and we have it in the minutes for everybody to see where, pardon me? They're at the band office. Okay, so this is, and we have some staff here. The situation is that the minutes have been always certified, and right now the binder, which is this big, is on back order. But if you go and ask the receptionist will give you the minutes. So they're always there. And we've talked about this as council. Tracy, I don't know if you want to speak to this at all. No? But where was I going? So it came from the minutes, but also there's an actual consensus motion by the council that it is the chief to only speak to the 1907 lawyers or any legal, actually. It states any legal, and I wish that I had it with me, but I don't. And, pardon me? Wow. No.
Okay, so there's a discrepancy or anomalies in some meeting minutes that we've came across. And exactly to the point what Chief brought up is why this came to our attention. we went and we have original documentation of our meeting minutes that was passed by the council. There is another version with extra wording specifically to this topic. That's why I addressed the meeting minutes. And we want them there, we want them physically there. To say that the binder are yay big, us as a whole nation, we can't find a 3-inch binder. That to me doesn't say what the minutes have to be in. They just need to be there in the office. And I've stated that previously too in our meetings.
You know what? We saw Kenny and Dolly here, but the thing is that I really, first of all, I'm putting this to a conversation that we as council are going to have, and that's where I'm going to bring it back to the council table. But also, what I am going to say is that I take very seriously if there's any sort of allegations here at all, because I don't have any control over those minutes, and I don't believe that any staff member would do such a thing. And so that's where I'll leave that, and that will be as an agenda item at our next council meeting. But the whole point is that that evening, because that's how bad it got, and I'm going to admit that, on all of our parts, and we talked about that as a council, that we all took responsibility. And that was a really low point for us as council. It was. And our membership deserved better. And that night, I went into prayer, deep prayer. And then the next morning, after that was written, I sat there and I thought to myself, I have to lead by example here. And only I can stop this. And, you know, I spoke with a couple of the Katayak, and, you know, as well as I spoke with a couple of council members that I deeply respect. And I made that decision that we're not going to get anywhere by acting like this. I'm not going to get anywhere by acting like this. And so that's why that afternoon I reinstated. And that's what happened. And it was within 24 hours. And it was because, and I talked about that I had to lead by example. And at that time, as a council, we all committed to working better and together for our people, because that's what our people deserved. And that's what we did. So I will admit that as a council, as your chief. A consensus motion? A consensus motion is that there is a consensus motion there, that it was the time that in, you know, Chief, I've been, okay. Like I said, we are going to discuss this at the council table. But what I am going to say is that I got knocked off my game. Oh, a consensus motion is that it is made by consensus, like we all talked about it, and that at the consensus, that was what the discussion was, that it was in agreement. And right now, I'm not, like, we're dealing with this as a spring legislative assembly. A special legislative assembly. And so I will answer some of these questions. But what I will say is that we will discuss that at that table, because I honor that table. And our people deserve better than calling out each other like this right here. I want to honor that table.
All right. So I understand everybody's frustrated. I really, really do. And I appreciate everybody trying to voice their concern. And I'm not trying to pick sides, but I'm going to stand up for this lady right here. She's a human being too. All you past leaderships, you guys know how hard it is sitting in those freaking chairs. Let alone put her on a spot like that. She's not the only one to blame. What about all those other chairs that are being filled in that chambers? You guys all got to work together, not just her. Putting her on the spot. A binder, 3-inch binder, buy one. Put it out there. Doesn't have to be the administration. This is sickening, you guys. I'm a member too. Nobody can speak on my behalf. But when it comes to hate and ugliness, why? Why is it so hard to come together as a community instead of bashing each other, being hateful? That's not how we were raised. That's not what our ancestors had to go through in order for us to be where we are today. We are the ones that are supposed to move forward and make things better for us. And even though as elected members and even as a community, we're doing it all wrong today. And I hope we can move forward after today to make everything better for everybody else and for the future of our children. Otherwise, they're not going to have one here. Thank you.
I think that there are a lot of issues being raised that do need a forum to be properly raised so that it can be dealt with solely on that issue. Because there's a lot of questions being asked to Chief and Council and to the role of councillors, and they need to sit down, plan that out, and then arrange for another community meeting specifically on that issue. I think that's what needs to happen. Okay? To put people on the spot here is not going to do any more than come up with information that people will try and verify or otherwise in different ways. Somebody called rules of natural justice a little while ago. One of the things you do is you give notice to somebody that you want to deal with something, and you give them proper notice so that they give full answer and defense, so that they're not put on the spot, that they can think out their answer and deal with it. It's not trying to hide. It's making sure that they have proper opportunity to answer that question with their evidence that they might have. That is what is proper of natural justice.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was responding to a comment and a question about our minutes, and I just stated as a councillor, we've requested that, I've requested that. A binder is a simple
and
that we have in our
I think
office.
there's a forum for that.
So it has been brought up and then repeatedly. I want our meetings posted to our membership so they can see those conversations. They need to see those conversations. They need to see these minutes. It's our right. It's our obligation as the council to have those meeting minutes posted. And they're not there. So that's all I was stating. And I addressed it yesterday, and I'll say the same thing again. Our meeting minutes are not there like previous terms before us. And they have been in the previous terms in that office, in a binder.
I want to make a recommendation that from going forth, Chief and Council have our Katayak at every meeting. There's too much toxicity here. It's obvious that you guys don't know how to work together in a constructive way. And according to the Election Act, I'm pretty sure we're supposed to be putting those minutes out after, 3 months or 30 days? I'm not sure. 2 months. So they are to be, so you already are in breach. So this talk about having, us coming back at you, we already have the grounds. It is in the Election Act that those minutes are supposed to be posted in the band office 2 months after the meetings, and they have to be ratified. So we got pictures that the last time any minutes were put in there was April 29th, 2025. So we really need those up to date.
I guess just to add this, the membership again. The majority of the membership here remember that we ratified our TLE agreement back in the early 90s, and that was developed as a people's trust. Band members were selected to sit on that trust as trustees. And it was, I forget what year that was now, 2013 to something like that. We ratified our floodplain trust and that's a corporate trust. So I think one of the things that should happen is the members should be provided information on the difference between a people's trust and a corporate trust. I'd like to go back to the comment from last night's meeting from Councillor Ali. There was a council motion to develop a group to work on this 1907 trust. And to date, that hasn't happened. And I think that's where we have to go. That chief and council, as a collective, select those individuals to sit on that working group to work on this trust on our behalf. And again, as a collective, I don't want to go back. I don't want to have to see, because that's very dividing when it's a political appointed group of people working on an initiative on behalf of the nation. So I'm saying, develop that group that was mentioned in that motion, who are selected as a collective from the council. I just wanted to share that. And I think one of the other things too is because there's so many other issues coming up, I think the council really need to have another assembly with the people to develop, to address all these other concerns. Because people have concerns regarding the governance practices that are being used by leadership, by the chief, the chief not following our governance documents as outlined within, our governance process as outlined in our governing documents. And I'll go back that maybe about 12 years ago, 9 years ago, we as Cowes, we really suffered with the current leadership at that time, big time, to the point where the nation was put into co-management. That's why those governing documents were established and developed, was to safeguard our nation, to protect our nation. And it's really up to leadership and the chief to follow those documents, those governing documents, because they're put in place to protect us, protect our nation. I just want to share that, but I think, really, the chief has to learn to work with all the council as a collective. Many times I hear something, I may hear a rumor, but I'm the type of person that I'll call the council members to find out what's going on. And I base my opinions, and some people call me a Facebook warrior, but you know what? I'm trying to educate the people on what's going on. We have our Constitution, fairness, honesty, transparency, accountability. And I think that's something the chief and the leadership really have to work on. So with that, I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
I'm going up next.
Thing in saying that there needs to be another meeting specifically on those issues. This one is meant to be for this other issue, and I think it's important that council is given the opportunity to deal with that and then bring it out with their membership. Sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. After standing here, listening to all the comments about why we are here, we're getting a bit off track, I think, and we're not dealing with what we're supposed to be here for. We are here now to try to resolve the issues of our 1907 specific claim. I've been around a long time. We say that the specific claim has been going on for 30 years. I'll tell you, it's been going on a lot longer than that. I remember sitting in my dad's house at the kitchen table with him, having visitors there in the early 70s. I could name the people, respected people that ain't with us now. Sam LaValle, Ernest LaValle, Victor Sparvey, Chief, Honorable. All these old people. Edwin Pelchy, that came and visited my dad in the early 70s and started talking about the 1907 claim. Somewhere along the line in the 80s, they started talking about the TLE settlement, and that kind of sidetracked 1907 claim. So this 1907 claim been going on for 50, 60 years, not 30 years. People have been working on it for 60 years, not 30. It just gathered traction here in the last 20 years, I'd say, 25 years after it was turned down twice. Let's stay focused on solving one problem at a time today. But I'm going to call for another assembly here within a week, within 2 weeks. And whether the elected officials are here or not, I'm going to be here. I want to listen to the people's concerns because I'm with the people. I'm for the people. Not as a counselor. I want to hear you so we could bring it back to the table. We can't get out and visit everyone. This is the best place to hear it. Going back to the 1907 claim, remember I said it started in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s? I sat back there and been in the room there and counted the number of chiefs we had since then. And I could start naming them all, right from Victor Sparvey, Ken Sparvey, Lionel Sparvey. There's 6 chiefs that are not with us now that were in this situation, fighting for this. There's 6 chiefs with us now. That's 12 chiefs that have been working on this 1907 claim, and we don't have it yet. Look at the counselors that worked with them. If an average of 10 counselors each term, with them 10, 12 chiefs, 6 chiefs, 10 times that, 120 counselors that have been working on this, fighting for this, and it's going to hell. It's been called a witch hunt, you know. We're here to see it to finish. We're here to try to finish it off. And I talked about respect last night. Let's respect each other. That's the only way we're going to get any place. We have to all respect each other and not go after anybody. Respect the past chiefs and councils that brought us here, the past chiefs and councils over the last 60 years. Don't throw that out the door. We're the chief and council now, but since we were elected in end of April 2023, it seems like it stalled. It didn't go on with the regular speed was going on before. I'm fortunate enough to have sit with the past Chief Cadmus and his council in the last 6 months of his term. And we met with Dan and Al. In them 6 months, we must have met with him 4 times. We also met with the Ottawa representatives, Gary Vanderhill and his crew, 2 or 3 times. They were out there actively. We were out there actively trying to settle this claim. Where did it go? Where did it go from the end of April till December 2023? You know, it has stalled. I believe we talked about them 6 chiefs we had at the time that fought for this claim. I called them a Senate. Let's form a Senate to go to Ottawa with our legals and fight for this. I'm sure they could have pushed it through, you know. We wouldn't be here today. But let's not respect what they've done before. Let's not respect the 30 years that Al and Dan worked on this. Let's respect that. Right now we're talking about there's an effort to throw it out the door, sweep it under the rug and start all new. Bring in new people that never worked on it. I refuse to do that. I will not do that. I will refuse to. Look at the people that worked on it. Look at Al and Dan, the law firm. That's where I want to go. For you, for the people, to solve this. If this goes to court, if this action leads to court, you're not going to see that 1907 claim for a while. We could still see it. We could still see it, but we got to work collectively as a group, as a Indian, as a First Nation band. And again, we have to respect each other in this room and at the council table, in the council chambers. The easiest thing to do is respect each other. That's the best way to get progress done. That's the best way to move forward. Respect. Thank you.
Is there any more questions on the trust? And oh, I'm being... Well, there's a question here that says, I wonder why the past chief wasn't questioned as much about this, about committees that were created on our behalf. Shaking my head, seems wrong to have a set of rules for one, but not the other. Well, I don't think it's fair that we talk about Cadmus. He's not here. So I think he can deal with that adequately if the opportunity arises. But so I don't think we need to be there for that. Okay, you got your hand up. Oh, I'm missing one. Sorry.
Thank you, Mike Wins. How the heck I get called an elder here, and how did I ever get 65? Damn. Well, thank you. Regarding the meeting, the elders, I was one of them that walked into the meeting that day, and we were invited. We were invited by a counselor, all 5 of us, 6 of us. And where the mystic communication came from, I'm not sure, but we hear it right here. So that's where the miscommunication came from. But we were invited to that meeting because we had concerns regarding the 07. That's why we were there. We were totally respectful when we walked in there. You know, we didn't raise our voice or nothing like that. And we asked them to come to our meeting. I am positive what we did there that day started this meeting here today. They can put whatever reason it is here today, but when it comes down to it, it's because we walked into that room. That's why we're here today. And again, where the communication come from, I don't know, but we were invited by a counselor. And that counselor knew we were sitting there because we were texting back and forth. And yes, and people knew we were there. But in saying that too, 1907, yes, it is one of the most important things that we work on as a First Nation. And when it comes to the trust, and I said this before, I said this at one of the first meetings we had, because trust dollars were put towards housing. No trust dollars to any band debt. No trust dollar going to any badly run band programs. I mean, this is for our children, right? To enhance our children's life. One of the ways I think is when it comes to students, we starve our students, right? So let's, maybe we can, for the single parents out there trying to get an education, trying to make their lives better, maybe they can join the gas and power program. Get them, help them out a little bit, pay for their books or do something, right? But yeah, when it comes to, and then major projects, when it comes to our trust, wealth creation projects only, and when it comes to those, I think membership should have a say. If we're getting into multi-million-dollar projects that could put us in jeopardy, and I say in jeopardy because we had a $6 million bill from a windmill project. Not sure where that went, but I heard it. And that's why when it comes to major projects, membership should be involved. The 3 meetings, then you vote on the 3rd meeting. If it's a good, business to get into, convince us, and we know good and bad, we know right and wrong, so give us the benefit of the doubt when it comes to those. But good discussions, keep it up when it comes to the membership. I like Terry's discussion there because we need a lot more meetings. Because when it comes down to it, we never had a meeting for 3 years. Not like our custom and our tradition is to have meetings where people get up and talk like this. Not just the one person, but everybody gets their say, and especially our council. But that's it. Thank you much, people.
I just want to reiterate, I guess, that what's wanted here by the members is to have Al and his team come down and do the presentation for the draft 1907 agreement. I'd like to get that, I guess, confirmed because a lot of us are waiting for it. And I know Al is probably waiting for it. So, let's get that meeting going. And I really don't think that we need to post things for a whole month just to make it right. We've called meetings before in a week, Let's do things and let's start having those meetings and get that information out to us so we can make good informed decisions. Thank you.
Okay, that's probably a question that needs to be discussed with them in terms of that. I think what we heard a little while ago was whether or not, I think McIver said, that might be a conflict for them to do a presentation defending their contingency agreement. Pardon me? Your contingency agreement is in that draft agreement. Well, I think they need to be asked if they feel comfortable doing that, is the first question, is the first issue. I don't think we can speak for Alan.
Okay, absolutely. Like that, I will, as chief, say that, yes. And also going back to, I really appreciate Richard's idea. And immediately, like as soon as we as council meet, I am putting that on the table, and for us to do a call out for a select group of like who the council selects to be that membership voice, and that's where I see more of the drafting or the more in-depth stuff going on, and then membership meetings, like I said, with Alan, Dan, and this committee, as well as chief and council working together to get input from the membership on what the membership wants in the draft. That's what I think, that's what I know that we have heard and that we should listen to, and I'm going to advocate for that as soon as we meet. So, Councillor Malcolm, were you like, yes, me too? Okay. Tap way, okay. That's when he actually says, okay, good enough for today, when he says tap way. There is a lot that we have to talk about, and like I've demonstrated today, and every time, I'm always so willing to hear and accept what's mine to accept in terms of how to do things better. I'm not a liar. I'm not a person to be deceitful. I'm not perfect. There's things I need to learn, but I also will stand up for myself too. You know, that's how all of us are. And I am only one of the 9 people you've elected. And we all have that collective responsibility. And I talked about that commitment to relationship that we have to get back to the next time that we sit at the table together, because like I said, you as membership deserve more, our nation deserves more, and I as chief have to be the first one to stand up here and say that. So yes, that's absolutely true. I'm going to get back to, and Bubsy, like what you said is true. It was informally, we received 3 documents. There was one before your the meeting down here that we received from one member, and then there was this meeting down here, and then almost simultaneously we received another letter requesting a special assembly. So we received 2 written, one asking very specific things, and that's why we put the very specific things that were requested in this special assembly agenda. That's why it's only those agenda items, because they asked for it under that part of the Constitution. But now we do need to have another, I'm not sure if it's going to be a special assembly, but it's going to be a place for us to all come together. And what I suggest is that we have a meeting of Architect first to guide us as council, and not to sit like this, maybe in a circle, you know, and to do this in a better way, you know. So there's things for us to, as council, we need to learn to do better as well, you know. And so let's think about those things and put those things on the table, and to do this in the best way possible. Now, when it comes to this, we have met our fiduciary obligation on the independent requests, because like was stated by Judge Morin, or I don't know if it was him or Stephanie or the other 2, and Dan and I will tell you this as well. I have to, as chief, I have to sign off on the settlement agreement and certify that we had this process done. We've now had this process done. There are certain things that we as a council have to discuss and also process. We have received direction, and we as a council, and aside once again I don't have a vote. I can put things there, as much power as people give me. At the end of the day, it's those 8 people that make the votes. And I think in these 3 years, I actually asked last night, I've only voted once to break a tie in these last 3 years. So it is the council that has been making the decisions in the last 3 years. Now, saying that, I think that I really believe in our renewed commitment to our relationship with each other so that we could work on behalf of all of you. And it's up to each of us to uphold it. And we should do so, and we'll figure out how we're going to do that. But I do believe that the one thing, and I always go back to this, the one thing that we have in common is love for our people and love for our land, and love for our children. And if we start from there, that's a good place to start. And so we will go back, and I believe in our council that we will go back and do this on behalf of our people with that. We have taken care of all of the different areas that have been requested by the 3, the informal requests, as well as the 2 requests that came by letter, and that's why those are on the agenda. And so I want to thank all of you for all of your input. And it's hard. These are hard discussions. And I think that unless there's anything else, that we can call it a day and then move forward. And this is an excellent start. And like I said, we've gotten this process done now. Now it's time for us as a council to go back and to let the 1907 lawyers do what they need to do and give that direction about what our membership, how the membership want the 1907 lawyers to do it, and that we will be the guardians of the voices of the people to make sure that it happens. So I don't know if any of the other council want to say. Councillor Joshua always ends off our meetings. I don't know if he wants to right now. But before that, I want to once again thank our old people, and I mean that in the best way possible, because, I'm not saying that as in an ugly way. One day I want to be called an old person, and if Creator allows for that. And our Katayak, our wise ones. And I would like to thank our youth for speaking today. That's what we're doing all of this for. And so thank you for that. I would like to thank, yes, let's give her a round of applause. And in that membership voice, we need to have that youth voice on that committee in there as well. And so I would also like to thank our visitors that came here. You probably won't see them again. And so, but we thank them for the purpose that they have, because we all have purpose, and they conducted their purpose. And now that we've completed this part, we can move on. So that's really what it's about. So Judge Morin and I think the other 2 may have vacated the building, or, they're over there. And so from Sam and Bruce, sorry, that's how much I don't know some people. And actually I did just, and who else do we have? Oh, well, Josh is going to come up and complete the meeting. But first I was just saying our thank yous. And thank you all for everything. And we as a council have a lot of work to do, and we will come back to you, our membership. So thank you.
Hello, thank you, Chief. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I know there were some tough questions today, and I guess hopefully we do have some clarity for moving forward and moving on. I just want to thank everybody for coming out, and I just want to remember that we have a Buffalo Committee call out. So if you guys are interested with being on the Buffalo Committee and helping us move forward with the Buffalo in a good way, just send an email out to me or I think it's on Facebook. But with that, I just want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody for being here and spending your time with us. And just like my brother Malcolm says, we're all a community here, and I love you all. Thank you. Bye.
I just want to say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come to your community. It's been a long time since I've been here. I think I last came to this community in 1975 or so. I was 4 years old playing golf. Not quite. I was going to University of Regina and I came here and played golf. But the one thing I want to say clearly, I like the fact that you have an opportunity through your constitution to do this. I think these discussions will give a learning curve for the council to prepare different things as they move on. These discussions, I think, will only get better because some anticipation of what issues are there that are really grinding for the people. And I think that is what is important. It's a situation where what is for the betterment of the community, not necessarily as individuals, but for the betterment of the whole community. I really admire that. I wish we had that in our First Nation, to have these type of meetings, but can you imagine 14,000 members? It does get a little hectic. But I thank you very much, and I'm honored to be here. That's it.